So the official definition of Python also states that Python is a general-purpose programming language. So let's understand why exactly that is so. So let's first understand what exactly is a general-purpose programming language. So a programming language which is used for building software in a wide variety of application domains is called as a general-purpose programming language, or GPL. Python is a general-purpose programming language because it could be used to write desktop software. It could be used to create web applications. It could also be used in data science and machine learning as well. So if you consider Python, with Python, you could basically write automation scripts. You could also create desktop software. So there's a library called AsTkinter, which you could use if you have to create a software for your computer or the desktop. And you also have frameworks like Flask and Django, which allow you to create web applications as well. And Python also has some really good libraries like NumPy and Pandas, which could be used for data science projects as well. So if you take a look at Python, all in all, there's a lot of things which you could do with Python. And henceforth, it's called as a general-purpose programming language, now as opposed to general-purpose programming language. On the other end, we have something which is called as a domain-specific programming language. So a best example of a domain-specific language would be SQL. So if you take a look at a programming language like SQL, SQL could only be used with databases. That is, if you have to go ahead and query a relational database, SQL could be used only for that. You cannot go ahead and create desktop applications with SQL. You cannot create web applications with them either. SQL is just limited to database and database only. And that too, it's actually limited to relational databases. And henceforth, languages like SQL are called as domain-specific language because they could be used only in a single domain. However, a programming language like Python could be used in multiple domains like data science, machine learning, web development, desktop applications, scripting, hacking, so on and so forth. Now, let's move to the next part. So they say that Python emphasizes code readability. So if you take a look at Python, Python gives special importance to code readability, and code readability basically means how easy it is for humans to read and comprehend the code. Now you will be able to see that Python is one of the most easiest programming languages you will be able to ever find because its syntax is so simple that no other programming language comes even close. And code readability is important because if a code is readable, more people will be able to use it. And this is what makes Python popular, as it is easy to use. A lot of people actually use Python. And another reason why code readability is important is because as a programmer, when you work at your job, you will be spending most of the time reading, trying to understanding, reusing, and modifying the existing code as opposed to writing new code. And if you are given a code base which is written in assembly language, you will find it extremely difficult to deal with that code base. However, if you find a code base which is written in Python, you will easily be able to understand what a certain set of code does. You will easily be able to reuse it, modify it, so on and so forth. And this is why code readability is important, and this is why exactly Python emphasizes on code readability. Let's move on to the next part. Python uses significant indentation. So again, let's first understand what indentation is. Indentation basically means having the space at the beginning of a line of code, and this is what non-indented versus indented code looks like. So here we have some C code. The left one is non-indented, and this one is indented. So you'll be able to see that after the curly brackets, we have a line of code, and we then have another line of code, and you'll be able to see that there's actually no space before this particular statements. But typically it's recommended that whenever you write a new code block, you always have some space here. And this space which you have over here is nothing, but is called as indentation. And the reason why we use indentation is to make code more readable. So both the codes are going to be executed exactly the same. They are not going to have any effect on performance. However, they do have an impact on the readability of code. If the code is well intended, it's much more easier to read that code later. Now in programming languages like C, C++, and Java, indentation is basically used for code readability and formatting. However, that's not the case in Python. In Python, indentation is the part of syntax. So if you do not indent your code, that means your syntax is wrong. And in Python, indentation is used to indicate a block of code. So this statement might not make much sense as of now, but it will start making sense when we start writing some Python code. So now let's compare Java code versus Python code in terms of indentation. So as you can see here, we have a simple for loop for printing 5 digits here in Java, and you'll be able to see that this is what a code block looks like in Java. So a code block is nothing, but it's basically a certain set of code which is included inside of a particular loop. So if you take a look at this, this is a for loop. And in order to indicate that we want to include this line inside the for loop, we have enclosed this line inside the curly brackets. So this curly brackets indicate that this for loop needs to repeat this set of code. However, in Python, we do not have such curly brackets here. So right now we have no idea what kind of code is included inside the for loop. But Python, instead of using the curly brackets like that, Python uses indentation. So instead of using curly brackets to indicate that, okay, this code is inside the for loop, we basically use indentation. So in Python, after having the for loop on the next line, we write print by giving 4 white spaces here. And that basically means that this print statement is actually included inside the for loop. And it's actually a part of for loop, unlike Java, where we have used curly brackets. So this is what indentation is, and you'll be able to understand indentation in a much more better way when we start writing some Python code. So we have learned why Python is called as a general-purpose programming language, why it emphasizes on code readability, and how it uses indentation. In the next lecture, let's go ahead and learn why Python is called as a dynamically typed programming language. Now let's learn why Python is a dynamically typed language. So even before learning that, we need to learn what dynamic typing is. So when we declare any kind of a variable in a programming language like C, we actually also need to define the type of variable. Now, if you don't know what variable declaration is, it's basically when you want to save some sort of a data into a variable. So let's take an example. So this is an example right here. And whenever you want to declare a variable in C, what we do is we say variable name, in this case x equals 10. And before the variable name, we declare the type of variable. So in this case, the type of variable is an integer. So we type int, and this int basically states that we want to save an integer value into this variable. Now the problem with this approach is that once you declare x type of variable throughout the execution of the program, you cannot save any other type of value into it. For example, as this is an integer variable, you cannot go ahead and change the contents of this thing to a string, so you cannot save a string, something like hello world, into this variable. That's because for the lifetime of the program, this variable is an integer variable. However, this is not the case with Python. When you want to declare x variable in Python, you do not have to assign any kind of type to that variable. So let's say if you want to create a variable a, assign it x value 10, you could do that without specifying an end here like that. And what this does is that this allows us to go ahead and change the type of the variable at different time during the execution. So, for example, if at the top I have declared it equals 10 at the bottom, I could go ahead and in that particular program, I could save a string value into the same variable as well. So due to this, a variable can have different type at different times during execution and in dynamic typing. The type of variable is decided at runtime. So for example, when you use a dynamically typed programming language like Python, the variable assignment is actually done when the program actually runs, and it's not done at the compile time. And this gives Python some sort of an advantage, like you could go ahead and change the type of variable anywhere and any time in the program when you want. So this is why Python is called as a dynamically typed programming language, because the variables do not have a fixed type. Python is garbage collected. Now, garbage collection is a very important concept to understand in computer science. So let's go ahead and let's first understand what garbage collection exactly is. So when you write code, you typically need to go ahead and use a data. And this data needs to be saved into the computer's memory. So for example, let's say when you create a variable and store a value in it. So this is what it looks like. So when we assign a variable and when we save a value into a variable, what we are necessarily doing is that we are saving this value 10 into a memory location inside your computer. Now, when the program is done using or working with this data, the memory location is still not freed up, and the programmer has to manually go ahead and free up those spaces or memory locations which were previously allocated. Now, this is actually a headache for programmers because along with writing a program, along with saving the data inside a variable, we also now have to be bothered with clearing up that memory space as well. And this is a headache. However, some programming languages come with a feature which is called as garbage collection. Garbage collection is a process of automatic memory management. The garbage collector reclaims memory, which was allotted by the program, but is no longer used. And Python is garbage collected language, which means that Python comes with a garbage collector. That means as programmers, we do not have to worry about freeing up or reclaiming the unallocated used memory space. And we as programmers do not have to manually deallocate the memory because as Python comes with a garbage collector, the process of freeing up the memory is automatically handled by Python itself so that we could go ahead and focus on writing the programming logic rather than worrying about if our memory is going to be used up. And henceforth we say that Python is a garbage collected language. So that was a brief introduction about Python and its different features. So in the next lecture, let's go ahead and let's write our very first program in Python. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.